Okay, hi, welcome back. So, welcome to my class, and we are going to continue about banking. And as I said, we will talk about is nationalization of banks, and we had spoken about that why the scheme had failed, if you remember, about the lead bank scheme. So today we will continue the same topic, and we will talk about that how banks were nationalized and why banks needed to be nationalized in India. So that is a very important point. So yes, let me write it down here. Nationalized or nationalization of banks. Okay, so we will start with talking about nationalization, and I will give you a brief history about that why banks were started in India and why was it required to nationalize. Because see, as India was a very poor country, it had to be nationalized. Okay, so that was one of the most important vital points. So let us write here. See, in a free market economy, business houses operate, okay, as per the invisible hand. Or what do we call as invisible? Because we cannot see, but there is a hand which is dominating the market, and that is why it is called as in economics as invincible or invisible hand of the market. And what is the invisible hand? It is called as demand and supply. So responding to the demand and supply conditions. And what was it? It was their sole objective was profit. So with the sole objectives of profits. Okay, so let me continue some more story about why nationalization was done. Okay, so let me continue. Now, the case of commercial banks is no different, and in a capitalist economy. So what is capitalist economy? Where the people are, or the businessmen, or only the organization or the entire country is only thinking about profits and not about mankind or about the society. So that is called as capitalist. The people who only think about profits, by investing capital, and they only think in return is profits and more profit. So let us take an example of a capitalist economy. So in a capitalist economy, they operate only for profit and not for any social purpose. Okay, but what about in a poor country like India? So in a poor country like India, which lacks resources, so India doesn't have any resources, okay, and has very inequitable, so there's like distribution of wealth is not equal, so and has inequitable wealth distribution and to the access to credit. So the money is very short in India. Okay, now, so there is a lot of problems. So if in India we have to have a capitalist kind of approach, it is very problematic. So there are lots of problems. So let us see the problems. Okay, so in a poor country the profit making banking can lead to the following problems. Okay, so what is the problem? Let us see one by one. So the first one is collapse of rural economy due to no money. So money is also called as credit. So due to non availability of credit or no assistance of money or loan. Second, lending is in favor of big business. Okay, there is no relation between banks and poor people. Rather, there is a relation between banks and corporates. So banks only give loans to corporates. So that is a nexus, or there is a only relationship where banks are there for catering to the needs of the corporates. Okay, let us come to the next point. So let me delete this. Let me rub it. Okay, so the next one is the fourth point. Concentration of economic power in richer regions and districts. Okay, so fifth and the last point, so that is why there was creation of monopolies. So there was only dominance of one person. So if a person had to wanted money or something, there was a dominance of one power, one big power, and that is why it is called as monopolies. So they used to dominate the market, and that is why the prices were in their hands, the supply was in their hands, everything, the whole market was dominated by them. So they used to do a lot of discrimination, and that is why they could ask any extravagant amount of money from the poor people. Now, to avoid all such problems, the government decided to nationalize commercial banks in 1969. And how was it done? Let's see. Okay, so how was rationalization done? Let's see. So the government decided to make banks nationalized. The first reason is to break the control of big business houses over commercial banks. So commercial banks only should not give loans or money, and they should not, only the big companies should not control the commercial banks. Okay, second, equal distribution of wealth. So here the idea was that the wealth should be concentrated completely all over India, and it should not be there in few hands. Okay, third, to develop agriculture and small industries by providing them timely credit. So what is credit? Giving money or assistance to money. And fourth was expansion of bank branches in rural and poorer districts. Okay, so now basically, as I said, now let us see the journey from 1969 to 1980. Okay, and let us see the timeline, how the banks have progressed. Okay, okay, so the timeline of bank nationalization. Okay, so let us first see July 1969. So July 1969, 14 commercial banks with deposits worth rupees 50 crores or more were nationalized. So only the history of banks, if you see in India, the nationalization were 14 commercial banks with deposit worth rupees 50 crores. Okay, now obviously this has increased. Let us see in April 1980 what happened. Okay, so then there was the second wave, and 1980 is considered. So the first wave was 1969 and second wave is 1980, April 1980. So second wave of bank nationalization. Okay, here 6 commercial banks were nationalized. Okay, and the nationalized bank controlled 91% of banking assets. Okay, so this is very important also, because you have to know that the timeline of bank was what. So July 1969, there were 14 commercial banks with deposits worth rupees 50 crores or more were nationalized. And then April 1980, second wave of bank nationalization, where 6 commercial banks were nationalized, and the nationalized bank controlled 91% of the banking assets. So this is a very important point. Okay, so now we will talk about some statutory bodies or establishments and how and what are their functions with some examples. Okay, which is also a very important part of banking system. So let me write down here: statutory bodies, establishment, their functions, and I will give some examples also. So this is the heading. So what are statutory bodies? So let me write down here: statutory bodies are established by acts with Parliament and state legislatures can pass. Okay, now these bodies are entities, so that means they are separate people, separate company or separate institution, shaped by an act of Parliament or state legislatures and set up by the government to consider the data, so data is information, and also make judgments in some area of activity. So as I said, these are the bodies, and they are entities which are shaped by an act of parliament, or set up by the government to consider the data and make judgments in some areas of activity. So what do you basically mean by statutory body? So let me just explain it much easy in an easy fashion. Okay. Okay, so basically a statutory body is an organization of government which is not included in constitution, included like it is not mentioned, rather let me use mentioned in constitution of India, but now there's a but here, but it gets powers, service, rules, authority by an act of parliament or state legislatures. Okay, so they are, I'll continue writing, so they are generally established to perform specific functions which government considers effective outside a traditional department. So apart from the government institution, there is a separate body which has been made for better effective establishment, or performance, so that so it's an extra body or an extra organization which is included apart from the basic, so that apart from the outside traditional departments also, they will help the government to function properly. Okay, so let me just clear this.